Life throws punches. We get knocked down. Only some people get knocked down from many different directions.
But what defines us isn't the fall or how many times we fall, it's how we rise.
Hello, I'm Satvinder Rana, and this is the story of Dr. Amo Raju.
Amo Raju was born with cerebral palsy to immigrant parents in an inner city area. His life seemed destined for struggle.
But you know what? Amo refused to let his disability hold him back. He found his inner strength, used it to his advantage, and changed his destiny. Today, Amo is the Chief Executive at Disability Direct, a multi-million-pound third sector organisation. He was awarded an honorary doctorate by the University of Derby. He's got an OBE for services to disabled people, and he's also the Deputy Lieutenant for Derbyshire. And he's won numerous national awards for his achievements. He's one hell of a guy. Let's go and meet him.
Amo Raju doesn't just tell his story, he shares the tools for success and resilience.
Amo, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you I'm really looking forward to this.
You know, you've had one hell of a journey throughout your life. You're an inspiration to many, many people around the country. As Chief Executive of Disability Direct, you've achieved so much. What's it been like being the Chief Executive of a thriving charity?
First of all, it's an honour. It's a real honour to be in this position and having held this position for so long. 30 years with the charity and 27 years as CEO. And it's been an interesting journey as a CEO as well, because if you ask me within different decades, you'd get a different answer. You know, the first decade when I was a CEO, I was full of energy and passion and a bit of frustration and hunger. It all came out. And the second decade was full of challenges. And then this last few years, things have mellowed out a little bit. But then when you look at the minutiae, the detail in all that time, if you ask me different days of the week, you'll get a different answer. Sometimes I'm quite relaxed and chilled. Sometimes I get quite angry but that's probably more old age now than anything. I feel frustrated that I want to do things. Part of it now is I'm feeling old and I get a little tired, and I think I want to do this and I can't, so I have to hand it over to somebody else because they've got the energy and drive to do it. So yeah, as I say, different answer based on on each decade and sometimes day of the week.
Yeah. You know, one doesn't become a chief executive overnight. It must have been a journey through life to get to the stage where you are now. Just take us back in terms of kind of, you know, Amo Raju as a person, as a child, growing up here in Derby. What was life like as a child?
You know, I was the first child born to the Raju family when they came to this country in the 60s, late 60s I was born. And so the family was still trying to settle and understand their environment. And then on top of that, they had a disabled child. And there had never been disability in my family, you know, going back decades before that. So there was no experience of how to handle a disabled child or a disabled person in general. So they had their hands full, if I'm honest with you. They didn't, you know, they were trying to assimilate into a new country. They didn't really speak the language very well. My dad was probably the only person in the house when he came to understand English. And I'll give you a classic example. I have cerebral palsy, which affects my right side. I didn't know I had cerebral palsy till I was about 22 years old. And I asked my parents, I said, surely there was a diagnosis as a child. They said there was, but we didn't understand it.
Right.
We didn't know what it meant. The way it was interpreted to us was that he's just weak on one side. So I grew up as a child, as a teenager, just thinking I'm just a little bit weak. When the term cerebral palsy hit me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Because again, I just did not understand what it meant, and I had to do a lot of research, and this was before the internet, so I just had to do a lot of reading in leaflets and libraries just to understand what was going on with me.
Okay, so you're a young father.
Yeah.
You've got 3 young children, lovely supportive wife, but you are, rock bottom.
Yeah.
In terms of your emotions, but also economically, jobless, no money, etc. And today you are the chief executive of a large charity, an organization which is a multi-million pound organization. How does one get from that right at the bottom, who's hit rock bottom almost, and climbs all the way to the top? Talk us through that journey.
Yeah, well, it wasn't in my plan to be a CEO. Some of this was circumstance, and some of it could have been divine intervention. And the right people came into my life at the right time, and they had angelic presences, which they will, some of them have left this world now. But I, as I said, was feeling pretty low, and I decided that I needed to retrain. And I'm still young enough. I was 23, 24 years old. I thought I'm still young enough to learn something. And what am I good at? I thought nothing. So I realized I've got to start with a clean slate. I went to the council house, and they had this partnership with the job centre, and 2 professionals decided that I should belong with this disability charity. That's just literally opened its doors a few weeks earlier. This brand new user-led organisation called Disability Direct. They had just opened the doors on Normanton Road in the city here, in Derby, and I felt a little aggrieved to some extent, thinking, why are you placing me in a disability charity? But then I thought to myself, well, I haven't really got any options, so I'll go. And I went on the first day. After about 4 or 5 hours, I thought to myself, I ain't coming back here. Yeah. This isn't for me. And as I was walking out the door, the CEO there was a chap called Richard Shaw. He looked at me, and he whether he had some instinct or something, he knew I wasn't coming back. And he goes, Amo, come into the office. And I thought, all right, let's entertain him. So he sat me down. He goes, what's wrong? You've not enjoyed it. It was one of the first tasks he gave me. Again, this was before the internet. He goes, I want you to write down the details. You're going to put together a database of every single care home and nursing home in Derby and Derbyshire. And I had to go through the book, Yellow Pages. And it was an endless task. And I thought, I hate this. He's making me do something that I hate. And he put me in front of a computer which I didn't know how to switch it on. I didn't know what to do with a computer. There was other disabled people around me looking at me, giggling, thinking this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. He ain't gonna last. But anyway, Richard said to me, he goes, I can see something in you. I said, yeah, all right, go on, here we go. He goes, you're angry, you're hungry, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're hurt. And I said, yeah, probably. I was a bit cocky. I was just staring out the window thinking, yeah, I'm going to get out of here, I'm going home. And he goes, you've done things in your life that other disabled people will never get the opportunity. I said, what? He goes, I've seen here on your paperwork you used to be a singer. What? I said, yeah. He goes, do you think, and he was a wheelchair user himself, he goes, I've never been a singer. He goes, you could teach me stuff about being confident on stage. I said, right. And he said, imagine using that skill set for the benefit of other disabled people. helping them with whatever is on their minds, helping them with whatever is frustrating them. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, right, I'll see. And I don't know what happened. I went home. I said to my wife, I still said I'm not going back. She says, why are you going back? I said, it's full of disabled people there. She goes, well, have you looked in the mirror? Who do you think you are? What do you think you are? You're a disabled person. And I thought, she's never said that to me before. And it clicked with me, yes, I am a disabled person. And that was a bit of an awakening for me. And I thought, well, okay, everybody around me seems to think I belong there, so I'll give it another go. And I went for the second day, and I went for the third day, and I was still going through, started my counselling sessions as well. So the timing of both of those things were great, because I'd go there and then I'd talk about it with the therapist. And I thought, well, that's great. So this is working. And what I found was a lot of the people that were coming through the doors were looking up to me for some strange reason, as the power of somebody behind the desk being an advisor, an advocate for whatever is on your mind. Again, I loved it, that I had this power, that I could help somebody. I wasn't making them dance in the old days, but I was doing something that they'd walk out the office a bit feeling better than they did when they'd come in. And that became another addiction for me. And I thought, right, I need to do more. And I started getting to a stage over a year or two where I wanted to bring in more services. I wanted to do extra stuff. So I'd get frustrated. I said, Richard, we need to do this, we need to do that. And one of the things he was adamant about that we wouldn't do is benefit support. And he said to me, Amo, don't touch welfare rights, don't touch benefits. It's a minefield. We're not the experts. We signpost people elsewhere. And I did something which I would never advocate to any other employee. I started doing benefits forms behind his back. He'd just see queues of people coming to see me, and he'd say, well, Amo's busy. He didn't realise I was doing benefits forms. And after a few weeks, I think I can't remember whether he caught me out or whether I just confessed. And I said, Richard, they're coming through the door. The minute we've sorted their finances out, we are friends for life. And they'll come back to us now with everything else that's bothering them. And that was certainly the case, because they suddenly wanted to know us all about social care problems, or blue badges, or well, they were orange badges in those days, or accessible holidays, or whatever. And I thought, well, this is great. We're getting a regular client base. And again, circumstances. Richard had to leave for ill health, and we had a short period where there was another chief exec come in who it didn't work out for him, and we ended up with about 3 months funding left. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. I've got nothing to lose. The board kind of put me into the CEO's position, and for those probably 3 to 6 months, I worked day and night. I honest to God, I didn't sleep sometimes. There was a Christmas period in between, and I remember working Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, writing out funding bids and letters of appeal and stuff. And we got, I think it was February 98 or something, I can't remember. We got a lottery grant come through of around £200,000, which was a lot of money in those days. And I felt great. I thought, the organisation is secure now for the next 2 to 3 years. But Sati, that wasn't enough for me. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like that feeling that I was having to beg people for money. Yeah. That I was having to dance to the tune of funders and their priorities. I knew what the priorities were on the street, because the street people were coming in off the street to us telling us what was bothering them, but funders weren't giving us funding for that. They were giving us funding for whatever the latest whatever the latest sexy project was. That was seemed to be what they wanted to fund. And I'd go for that funding as well, but it wasn't what was demanded. What was demanded by our service users. So inside me, I kept thinking, how do I have funding? How do I have finance and resource without wanting to persuade somebody else, without having to persuade somebody else? And a tender came out from the local authority for social care support, and this tender was all about giving disabled people more independence in recruiting their own staff, the direct payment scheme. And that part of that was to deliver a payroll service. And this is how overconfident I was. I wrote in the tender, yeah, we'll do a payroll service. Never done one in my life. Didn't know where to start from. But I wrote it in the bid anyway. And to cut a long story short, my then admin assistant stroke PA, in a previous life she was a bookkeeper. And she ran a few dummy payrolls in front of me. I said, is that easy? She said, yeah, this is how you do. You just get the software, bang. I said, and accountants are charging silly money for this.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, I know what I need to do. We started charging for payroll. And again, long story short, within a few months, we ended up having a couple of hundred clients. And we were making money and charging peanuts. And the word spread, and before we realized it, we had, a couple of thousand clients. And that gave me an income which I didn't have to report on. I could say, right, okay, that's going to fund welfare rights, because nobody wanted to fund benefits advice. I said, right, that's going to fund welfare rights. That's going to fund disability discrimination advice. That's going to fund carer support, whatever I had an idea for. I thought, I don't need to run to funders anymore. And over the following few years and decade or so, we developed into a scenario now where this charity is 92% self-sufficient. The trading arms that have been set up, their profits are funding the charity, and I can do what I need to do. It gives me the confidence that I'm not having to. I can go to the local authority now and say, do you want to deliver a project? I'll do it. And some of them don't necessarily quite like that. They think it's a bit cocky sometimes. Yeah. But we as an organisation have set the template, because other disability groups in the UK are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We were one of the first. I'll be quite happy and confident in saying we were one of the first to do that. And the concept of charging for services suddenly became my expertise. Yeah. And don't let me paint it too easy. It wasn't easy. I lost a few trustees overnight because they thought ethically that's wrong. Yeah. Charities shouldn't be doing that. And a lot of local authority staff didn't like it that we were becoming too big for our boots. Nothing against local authority staff, but sometimes they like the power themselves of, we could tell this voluntary group how to behave. And suddenly I was able to stick a couple of fingers up when I needed to, without sticking fingers up.
Well, you've done wonders here, and I think your legacy will continue for many, many decades to come. When is it time to call it a day?
We're near there. We're at that. The pilot in my head is saying it's time to land. Yeah. So I have initiated conversations with my chairperson, that I need to do a slow exit. I don't want to just walk out and leave. It's my baby. I can't turn my back on it completely. It's going to be painful when I do, but there's going to be a time now that I need to step down as CEO, because there's some fresh talent out there.
Yeah.
There's some fresh talent within the organisation. There's people with ideas of doing things which I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur at the way I do them. So I have started that conversation, and within months I probably will step down from the CEO's role.
Will you miss it?
Yes and no. I think the board still wants me in some capacity, whether it's just to roll me out in front of the media every now and then. That's fine, I've got no issue with that. But one thing which I haven't mentioned is I missed out on my family. I worked here, and I've given 30 years of my life to building the foundations for a great organisation which will hopefully be here for 100 years or more, but at the expense of my children and my wife. And it really hit me in 2017 when my daughter was getting married, and as she was walking down the aisle at the temple, my eyes filled up, not because I was a proud father and I thought my daughter's getting married, but because I thought she was that big when I started at DD, and how did this happen? That she's been to school, university, she's a teacher, and now she's getting married. And it really hit me that I've lost out. And now I've got grandchildren, and I thought, I don't want to make that mistake again. I just want to be with them as much as I can, because life. I lost my father a few months ago, and the thing that taught me was your next breath isn't guaranteed.
No.
So I want to spend as much time as I can with those people that care about me, and I've neglected them. I really have neglected them. They've been brilliant in that they haven't complained once. I would have complained, but the characters that they are, they even my wife to this day, she says, you're on a mission, you've got to keep going. And I says, well, I'll go, but then I won't have enjoyed my life.
Well, this organisation gave you national recognition, if not global recognition. And a couple of years ago, you got an honorary doctorate from Derby University. You got an OBE for services to the disabled people. You are the Deputy Lieutenant for Derbyshire. How did all that? I mean, those are massive accolades, aren't they? That they don't hand those out to anybody, but you've got those.
I'm still pinching myself sometimes, thinking, has that happened? And I was so busy working all those years, I didn't once think I deserve some credit for this. I was just pleased to be known as the CEO of Disability Direct. To me, that was a great title, a great feel-good factor when I could walk down the street and everybody said, there's the CEO. But the first one happened. In fact, the very first accolade was, I got an email from the British Sikh Awards saying, you've been nominated for Outstanding Third Sector Achievement. And I thought, yeah, whatever. Never heard of you, British Sikh Awards. It was their first time they'd ever done something. And I thought, okay. And they said, do you want to come down on the night? And I thought, well, all right, it'll be a night out. So me and my wife and a couple of friends, we booked a table. We went down. And we got held up on the A38. It was the awards were in Birmingham. We got held up on the A38. And there was there was a flood, and we were stuck there for 5 hours. So we got to the venue, and the idea was to get there in plenty of time, change into tuxedo and everything. We got into the venue, ran into the rooms, put the tuxedo on, walked into the room, into the hall, and they just announced the winner. And I hadn't even had time to sit down. I just literally went straight to the stage. And I thought, is this real? Have I won? And the brilliant thing was, Mr. Pachungi was there, because he just got an award. And they all asked him to sing Babi Aklarge, which is my track as well. I copied his track. So I got to sing on stage with him on that night. We both sang the same song together. And that was a bit of a dream come true. So I had a great night. But again, that started something for me. I thought, oh gosh, this is not right. I love this feeling of winning something.
Yeah.
But a couple of months later, I got an email from the University of Derby. And the email was direct from the Vice-Chancellor's office saying, we'd like to give you an honorary doctorate. I thought, this is a joke. Doctorate? Immediately my mind went back to me sitting on my dad's lap as a child where he says, you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And I just kept staring at the email for about an hour. I said, what do I do with this? So I picked up the phone and I rang them. I said, is this a joke? And they said, no, it's true. We want to give you a doctorate. I said, what for? They go, we've been watching you for all these years.
Yeah.
And, your work, your contribution to disabled people in the local third sector is something we want to celebrate. So, I went round to my dad and I said, Dad, remember you said, you want me to be a doctor? I'm going to be Dr. Raju. And, his eyes filled up. And he said, what was meant to be is finally happening. So, and that was great. And then a year later, I got an email from the Cabinet Office in Downing Street saying, you've been put forward for an OBE, do you accept? And I thought, yeah, this is another joke. So I thought the easy way to check this, I emailed back, did a blank email back, and I got a bounce back saying, thank you for your response, the cabinet office will be, I thought, bugger, this is real. So I quickly emailed back, yes, I accept, yes. Yeah. And I was awarded the OBE. I had to stay quiet about it for a couple of months. Yeah. And then literally after the OBE, about a few weeks later, the Lord Lieutenant of Derbyshire came to see me, and she sat in my office upstairs and said, we'd really like you to become a DL, a deputy. I was gobsmacked. I thought, me? Working for you? Working for His Majesty the King? Oh gosh, what an honour. Yeah. What can I say?
So you are the King's representative in Derby,
in Derbyshire. Yeah. So it's amazing. I've done a couple of engagements, and what a feeling that you're treated like almost like royalty when you walk into a room.
Well, you're the proxy royalty.
Oh yeah, it's a strange feeling, and I look back sometimes. I was laying a wreath on Remembrance Sunday on behalf of one of my duties, and I felt so emotional that I was being asked to do this. This poor disabled kid who has been written off was putting a wreath down to those war heroes on behalf of the Lord Lieutenant, on behalf of His Majesty the King. And I just thought to myself, and my wife stood next to me at that time, and we both felt so emotional on the way home, saying, I've just done something that I used to see on the TV happening with very important people. And it was just a strange feeling. But then the other big one, which I was nominated for the Lifetime Achiever Award, and I thought it's a night out in Liverpool. Some of my staff, some of my trustees, and my family. I took my wife and my children with me. And the Lifetime Achiever Award was the last award. It's the one that they're all waiting for. And I thought, I ain't going to win this. But as Claire Balding, the BBC presenter, her and the organizer started announcing the winner, and they started talking about this person. I thought, that sounds like me. He's been a chief exec of a user-led organization for nearly 30 years. He's raised millions. I looked around, I thought, he's talking about me. And then when they mentioned the word CEO of Disability Direct, my legs turned to jelly. Because the first thing that was on my mind was, I was sitting at the back of the hall. I've got to walk all the way to the front, and my blood pressure was going all over the place. And how am I going to do this? But I just 90,000 votes and nominations.
Yeah.
I got the top prize, and I was so emotional that night. My trustees were crying. They were at the table at the back. When I got back to them with the award, there were tears in their eyes. My family were crying because they said, finally you've got some recognition on a national stage like that. Okay, the OBE, it meant a big thing for me, but to have votes from people who never knew me, you know, I'd never met.
I mean, these are huge accolades, you know, by any stretch of the imagination. They are huge. To have an OBE, to be the deputy lieutenant, to have a lifetime achievement award, and to be given an honorary doctorate by your local university, these are huge. So as you mentioned, you're winding down in terms of your career. What does the future hold for you? Is there still some unfulfilled ambition, kind of a desire to do something in your semi-retirement?
I want to chair the United Nations. No, the thing is, I have this, as I say, renewed side frustration of tackling South Asian prejudice and ignorance towards disability. And so that is something I will continually battle, and I know I'm not going to win that battle in my lifetime, but if I keep making the noises in the right places, you know, I'll hopefully change a few processes and thought patterns. My wife said something to me, and one of the last things my father said to me before he passed away was, you know, all these things you've done and you're doing, make sure they're for the greater good. You know, if you're winning awards, it's got to be for the greater good.
Yeah.
It's great to have trophies sitting on a shelf, but do something with those trophies. Use it to your advantage. And if you've got a name, use that name to influence others. Yeah. So that's one of the things I want to try and do. That it's if I've got an OBE, or I am a DL, or I've won a Lifetime Achiever Award, or whatever, then it's great for the ego. Let's massage the ego for a few minutes, but after that, let's put it to community use.
Well, you've certainly done that, Amo Raju. What a life, what a man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.